Virginie Carthage, and has been enrolled as a lawyer in the Tunisian Order of Lawyers since 2010. Meriam is also a writer, director, lecturer, researcher, and bridge builder, and she's trained and works in many different contexts and across borders. The rest of the CV is in the brochure, so without further ado, we're excited about this. We're going to hand over to Meriam for a paper called Who Would Save the Rooster Who Saved You? Scheherazade. Theatre for a non-readymade exportable justice. Thank you, Meriam.
So, good morning. I'm very glad to be here today after a very nice evening with you. And now I have to perform a little bit that I am serious. So I will try to get to the mood that I am serious. It's a great honor for me to be standing here and to be part of this conference. And I owe this honor to Professor Dr. Egham, and I would like to express my gratitude first to him, because I'm used to hear from my mother that I have to stop at one point looking for knowledge, because it's not about knowledge, it's about who I know. But I think she's wrong. I think it's about who knows you, who will remember you in a room full of opportunity, and who sees your work and appreciate and value your work and remember you when there is a chance to get more visibility. And that's why, thank you very much, Professor Dr. Egham. And I would like to as well express my gratitude to Professor Dr. Lennox Lynette Lane Goddard for the very beautiful, from the beginning, exchange, and for the hospitality, for also empowering us all in this conference. Actually, I will jump directly now to conclusions. I will say always to my students or with colleagues or with the actors, please don't jump to conclusions. But I will do it myself now before I start my lecture and say that it's my first AfTA conference, and I'm really moved, and I will leave with at least 3 takeaway ideas or reflections. The first reflection is about the possibility and the practice of trying to break with the monopolies and the hierarchies of knowledge. That means I'm really impressed that I am in a room where people are different, coming from different disciplines, people are having different ages, people are coming from different backgrounds, and people having a different career. There is the beginners, there is the mid-career, there is people who are already have a great career. I think this is very important today in order to think, or to not only to think and to contest and to protest on stage and in our papers the idea of epistemic, or not the idea, the fact of epistemic injustice. It is very important to make it practical and to know how to build or to start building opportunities where we bring people from different horizons, but also from without this hierarchy. I mean, I'm used to go to conferences, it's always about experts and specialists, and Dr. Professor Herr, Professor Monsieur, and people don't mix, and there is always the young generation, or the young researcher or scholars, or the artists, and then the scholars, and then the professors. Yeah, this not mixing, yeah, not coming together into dialogue. And I appreciated a lot this possibility to meet with different people, but also to engage in a small room, for to be always right, to be open to be wrong, and to be open as well to navigate between languages and between very closed ways, set mindsets to look and to understand the different topics that we are dealing with. And this means as well a lot of self-discipline. Yesterday we had at the afternoon a very nice session with artists from, not only artists, but they are as well scholars and translators and theatre makers, cultural makers from different parts of West Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. And we were in the room from different cultures and different languages, and we were in an active translation of the message they are sending us and trying to send them some message. And it was not an easy exercise. It was also a room full of misunderstandings and capacity to not really get to understand each other acoustically, but also with this virtual exchange, but also within the languages, within our experiences and understanding of theatre practices in the different parts of the world. But for me, this is a wonderful opportunity to think, not to think only, but to practice what means to get out of our comfort zone and to be in dialogue with the other. This is what the first takeaway idea or reflection I will have it with me on the road. The second thing is the art of a smart listening. I am in a conference. When I sit in the room, I hear people reacting to what is being said. I'm not in a room where people don't have any emotions. Actually, I live quite a bit in Germany, especially, and I think I got used to be in a room where I don't hear reactions until the end of someone's speech. There is not and I think this is really an empowerment tool. It's like we know that we may, in some music and cultures like rap or flamenco, or there is always this idea of really, but also with the griot, with les conteurs, the storytellers, there is always this very active listening. It's not about only like performing that I agree or disagree. It is more than that. That means that I accept you in your vulnerability, that I try to get in touch with you, with your capacity to think and your possibilities to bring me out of my, what I think it's the truth. And I really appreciate a lot, I appreciate it a lot to be part of the audience and to hear this emotional listening. I think it would be labeled like this, maybe in some context, but for me it's a smart listening. The third thing I loved as well, and I would like to thank you all for this, is your radical curiosity and your as well your engagement. I am leaving this conference really with very interesting teaching and inspirations about what is going on in the world, and I thank you for that. I thank you for this collective exchange and this collective intelligence and knowledge. And thank you for being open to share your knowledge and your question and your vulnerability. I would like as well to thank the team of the conference, Robin, Chris, the live designer, Bruce, and all the people who contributed to make it happen, because we know theatre or organizing a conference is a team work, and without all these people we will not be sitting here and sharing this moment. So I finish now with the conclusions. We can start the dance that yesterday we tried to make happen. Okay, so I would like to start first by reminding you about the title I have chosen for this keynote. Who would save the rooster, who saved you Scheherazade, Theatre for Non-Readymade Exportable Justice. So I picked up this title actually when Professor Lennox Lynette Lean Goddard asked me to send in a title and an abstract. Back then I thought, I think it was in May, something like this, end of May, and back then I thought it was clever to choose a title in an interrogative form, hoping to stimulate your curiosity in the same way that Scheherazade had stimulated the curiosity of King Shahryar, who had become numb when he learned that his wife was cheating on him and had decided to marry a virgin woman every night whom he would execute at dawn to ensure that no woman would ever cheat on him again. I was even sure it would be a good idea to think about strategies to save this, the 1001 Night rooster in the context of the ongoing climate tragedies. However, I am sorry, I'm really sorry that I have to disappoint you. I have to find the arm of disappointment, okay? Because I have to disappoint me, you know, from the very start, because it seems that this famous rooster in question has already been sacrificed. As you can see in this cartoon, so this cartoon is by Egyptian cartoonist Dua al-Adl, and it was published in 2021, as you can read in this cartoon. So I swear that 3 months ago, I really didn't even know that this cartoon exists, yeah? I even was excited by the idea that we will be the pioneers to speculate on justice and the ecological dimension of Scheherazade's story. To my knowledge, nobody has done that yet. But the question is now, why I thought that justice could be met or done by saving Scheherazade's rooster, and why has the Egyptian cartoonist Dua al-Adl thought that justice could be done by sacrificing Scheherazade's rooster? What lies behind these two opposite aesthetic choices? As you probably know, saving the rooster or cooking it to act justice is a double matter of perception and representation. It also depends on the context in which the artwork is produced. Indeed, staging injustice or justice cases raises complex situation and question with far-reaching implication related to who is being represented, how this representation is taking place, by whom, and for which audience. Whether the stage is the cartoonist's canvas, the playwright's blank page, oh la la, the theatre stage, or court role, it is never a neutral space. It is never an innocent field of representation. It is always a space where aesthetic choices, ethical positions, and political decisions are made according to a certain perception of the self and of the different ways of relating to and interacting with the world. In this presentation, conceived less as an academic lecture and more as a self-reflexive account, I would like to reflect aloud with you on the challenges the North African female theatre makers face in their work at local, international, and transnational contexts. In order to give some structure to my thoughts, I propose this following articulation in 3 tales. Tale 1, Scheherazade's rooster. Tale 2, invisible cages. And tale 3, the beauty in between. So, let's come back to this famous story. So, in the North African collective imaginary, from Cairo to Bijaya and all the way to Nouakchott, the two main characters of Alf Layla wa Layla, 1001 Nights, Scheherazade and Shahryar, are often associated with the rooster that foretells the coming of dawn the key moment for Scheherazade to go silent. In fact, Scheherazade saves her life and those of would-be victims of Shahryar by telling stories that compel him to want to hear more. She has a very simple trick. Every morning, when the rooster starts crowing, she stops telling stories so that the curious king has no choice but to delay her execution for another night until he can hear the end of the unfinished tale. You could call that a negotiation technique that has been highlighted in the Arabic language in a famous refrain that everyone in North Africa knows by heart. This refrain is وسكتت شهرزاد عن الكلام المباح حين صاح الديك معلنا أن الصباح قد لاح, which can be roughly translated into less rhyming English as, and Scheherazade kept quiet when the rooster crowed, announcing that dawn broke out, no word more was allowed. This is my translation, and it's not faithful at all. I just tried to make some rhymes. As far as I know, this wording and this imported metaphorical image are missing from the French, English, German, and German translations of the 1001 Nights. Actually, the translators of 1001 Nights seem to have been the first to kill Scheherazade's rooster. In their interpretation of the tales, the famous life-saving rooster disappears, or at least becomes less visible, less performant, and less important in the dramatic construction. Unlike the original Arabic version of 1001 Nights, where the rooster plays a very important double role. The first role is the rooster is the time regulator of the speech. His crowing allows the storyteller Scheherazade to go silent after talking for the whole night. The second important role is the rooster is the time regulator of power. His crowing announces that the moment when King Shahryar orders his wife's execution or not. Therefore, I can say that translation as a complex operation of perception and representation in a different language and cultural belief system could impoverish the original work of art and empty it of its referential potential, transforming it into a sample reduction, not to say an oversimplification. This is how, for example, 1001 Nights has been reduced to motif of magic lamps, flying carpets, female figure in costumes of diaphanous veils in most Western representations, especially in Hollywood misrepresentations. Such reductionism could, of course, be perceived as unfair, especially in terms of cultural domination dynamics. However, if Scheherazade's rooster disappears in the translated tales, this is more of a linguistic accuracy issue and less of a fairness issue, at least, not directly. But the sacrifice of Scheherazade's rooster by the Egyptian cartoonist raises an obvious justice issue. Indeed, in most theatrical, filmed, animated or radio adaptations of the 1001 Nights in classical Arabic and in the North African and languages and dialects, the rooster is always portrayed as a main character. It is almost inconceivable to remove his role and his crowing, which comes at the end of each tale, bringing fates into perfect alignment. Dramaturgically, it would be argued that Scheherazade is not just a militant figure like Antigone, ready to sacrifice herself in the quest for justice. She is a pioneering ecological figure who has established a relationship of complicity and allyship with nature, embodied by the figure of the rooster. This means that if the rooster were to disappear, Scheherazade's very life would be in danger. One might have thought that maybe Shahryar, bored with Scheherazade's stories, might think of getting rid of the rooster to provoke Scheherazade's beheading. But when Scheherazade herself cooks her life-saving rooster and replaces him with a cat to denounce the rising cost of living, it is definitely a subversive and ingenious act of resistance, especially when we know that Egyptian artist Dua al-Adl produced this cartoon in 2021 in the midst of post-Covid inflation and the economic crisis under President Sisi and going dictatorial regime. Just for the record, the name Al-Adl means in Arabic, la justice means justice. And Dua al-Adl claims to be a political cartoonist. She publishes in Egypt in several left-wing newspapers, and this cartoon was originally written in Egyptian dialect or Egyptian language, and I translated into English for the conference. This cartoon can therefore be interpreted as a highly courageous political statement against Sisi's policies in the local Egyptian context. It may even put her at risk of prosecution. However, this full referential complexity of this cartoon, its style and scale, may not be immediately understandable to those unfamiliar with the North African Arab culture and the Egyptian political context. Indeed, beyond its catchy anecdotal aspect, this cartoon shows the extent to which Scheherazade continues to be seen as a figure par excellence of resistance and justice negotiation in North African cultures. Scheherazade embodies what I would call the North African womanist, to paraphrase the writer Alice Walker. By this I mean the commitment of North African women to a wider struggle for justice and equality for all, without reducing the struggle to a simple binary and gender-based conflict between men and women. North African womanism is committed to tackling all forms of hegemony and exploitation, because we know that women's emancipation cannot be isolated from the other oppressed classes in a society. We are aware that the most powerful enemy of women's rights is patriarchal capitalism, which enslaves and captivates people in different ways and to different degrees. Scheherazade continues to inspire female artists and thinkers in North Africa. Several books, theatrical adaptations, paintings are constantly reinventing her justice negotiation strategies in line with new challenges. Recasting Scheherazade in North African contemporary representations spotlights her ingenious talent for undoing mansplaining and replacing it with, I will call, womansplaining that transforms the listeners. North African Scheherazades are not victims to be pitied. They are civilizing agents who negotiate through words and actions a more equitable justice than that of the ruling powers. This screenshot of an article published on Jeune Afrique magazine is an example for that. I can also mention my play, Zapping Under Control, which I wrote and directed a long time ago in 2008, when I was young. Okay. The Zapping Under Control paints a portrait of a Tunisian society disoriented under Ben Ali's dictatorship, which exploited women's suffering and traded on their rights to gain undue legitimacy. The performance, as you can see on this photo, begins at the entrance to the theatre, where the audience has been checked by the performers to see whether any of them are hiding dangerous ideas and whether they are going to steal from the productions good ideas at the end. Other theatrical situations also take place in the auditorium and seek to establish a negotiation of space, narrative, truth, rights and obligation between performers and spectators. Let's watch together this short video from the play. Great, so I would like now to introduce you to Act 7 of The Being Under Control, which is called Game Over. In this act, this act features a postmodern Scheherazade and Shahryar where everything has become virtual. Shahryar is busy playing a video game in which he kills versions and deplores the fact that even virtual versions are increasingly rare. The question of virginity is still leider, also unfortunately, is still a taboo in Tunisia, by the way, even today. So, and when he beats the highest score of murdering virtual versions, he asks Scheherazade to tell him a story. But Scheherazade doesn't have time. She's getting ready for her media activities to promote women's rights. She can't even remember her tales and confuses the characters and events that Shahryar is desperately trying to remind her of. Scheherazade has gone from the storyteller to the listener. It is Shahryar who is now telling her stories that she was once the only one able to tell. Having been transformed into a submissive husband by Shahryar's tales, Shahryar has completely lost his power, and it is Scheherazade who now rules, relying on her media fame. When Shahryar threatens to kill her if she doesn't tell him a new story, she decides to wage a media war against him, reminding him that without her intelligence, without her passion and wisdom, he would not have gone down in history and no one would have heard of him. Mm-hmm. It is true that in this 2008 production, I didn't think about saving Scheherazade's rooster, but I did stage a postmodern Scheherazade who negotiated the distorted images of women in the media that supported political manipulation in my country. As for the ecological question, I have tackled it in other acts, but also through the executive use of plastic throughout the scenography. But what happened to Scheherazade when she goes west? As you can see, this is the title of Moroccan sociologist Fatima Mernissi's famous book. According to Mernissi, when Scheherazade goes west, her life-sustaining art of storytelling is no longer perceived as subversive, but rather as submissive. Trapped in a nexus of intersecting, gendered, racialized, and sexualized expectation of performative identity and cultural display, Scheherazade, like the North African women and artists, are either misrepresented as exotic erotic dolls, belly dancers or harem girls, or as the victims, silent, dominated, and covered under a veil or a burqa. Orientalist projections totally undermine Scheherazade's and North African women's potential and talent of an active and strategic negotiation of power and justice. I would like to read for you a quote from Mernissi book. I quote, "In conclusion, one could say that the West's understanding of Scheherazade and the harem world was skin-deep, cosmetic and superficial. The storytellers yearning for a dialogue between men and women found no echo in the West. Yet, women in North Africa are constantly seeking and practicing dialogue, especially during the popular uprisings or the so-called Arab Springs since 2011. In Tunisia, for example, just after the revolution, political Islam invaded the public space and sought to abolish the women's rights that Bourguiba, the first president of independent Tunisia, has established in 1956, such as the ban on polygamy, the right to divorce, the right to education. Tunisian women did not give in and took over the public, political and artistic agora, trying to engage in dialogue to defend their rights and to demand even more rights, such as gender equality, inheritance, the right to marry a non-Muslim, and the recognition of same-sex, queer and transgender rights. Of course, this has not always been an easy dialogue. This is the topic of my performance, Sabra ou Quoi de neuf après la Révolution, Sabra or the day after the revolution. Sabra means patient in Tunisia, an adjective used to describe a Tunisia that was going through the difficult exercise of renegotiating the general rules of social coexistence. Let's watch together this short clip from the production, which features a negotiation session at the Constituent Assembly of Tunisia in charge of writing new Tunisian constitution.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you have noticed, that dialogue might not always be easy, but I think it's necessary. So, in 2012, this year, this play was produced. There was a great deal of tension and violence in the public space, and there were even political assassinations. We had to change the rehearsal spaces at least 3 times because we were threatened by Islamists. We could only perform the premiere. The performance caused a controversy. I can get it now. The next. Great. So, the performance caused controversy, thank you, by criticizing political Islam and drawing on Muslim culture for its aesthetic references. Several scenes were deemed to be in breach of Islam, such as mixing the Quran with Sufi singing, the call to prayer by female voice, the rejection of Imam's authority, the dancing of a cross-dresser to a traditional song, etc. The play was discussed on TV and in the newspapers, and it wasn't that easy, but that was also the aim, to use theater to negotiate our space for freedom. As you have seen as well in this performance, I have opted for the typically Tunisian aesthetic inspired by traditional costumes, songs and rituals. After the premiere in Tunis, we played the performance with the same team in Germany at Theater an der Ruhr, but I had to replace over half of the performers to bring the performance to Casablanca Theatre and Cultural Festival, because many of them were afraid of being attacked and decided to leave the project. Unfortunately, self-censorship is not less difficult and dangerous to handle than censorship. This brings us forward to another question of cultural mobility, narratives, and international exchange politics or policies. This is the second part, which I have called Tale 2 Invisible Cages. Should I go further? Okay. So, invisible cages. Do you know, please, the tale of the lady with the feather dress from Scheherazade or from 1001 Nights? Who knows the tale of the lady with the feather dress? So, this is my favorite tale told by Scheherazade. It's a very long to tell, and especially very difficult to tell in the way Scheherazade told it. But I will a little bit try to make a summary of it. So, once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a young man called Hassan al-Basri. One evening, he was sitting in the middle of a wonderful garden overlooking a lake, when suddenly he saw 10 large birds gracefully land on the shore. Once on the ground, the big birds undressed, and big surprise, under the feather dresses were very beautiful young women. Hassan felt madly in love with one of them, so he decided to steal her feather dress to prevent her from flying away again and to take her as his wife. His plan worked, and the young woman with the feather dress ended up adapting to her forced captivity, having no choice but to accept Hassan as a husband. Hassan had always kept an eye on the feather dress and kept it very well hidden, fearing that she would find her wings and fly away. The years went by, and the couple even had 2 children together. The 2 children together, the woman seemed happy and fulfilled, and Hassan thought that motherhood made her forget about her captivity, but
so much, Miriam. We didn't know what to expect. You were fabulous, as expected. So thank you very much. We're going to take some time. We've got about 10 minutes actually. We can go a bit longer. To invite some questions, comments, dialogue, feedback from the room in response to Miriam's storytelling.
It's night again. No, because now I cannot, how can I answer the question? It's the morning, I cannot speak. Okay, now it's the night again. I can do stories.
Hi, thank you so much for that. That was really, really interesting. In the second performance example, I was really intrigued by the kind of the layering of the vocality, moving from the unison to the 5 different vocal lines. But it's not material I'm familiar with. I wondered if you could say a little bit more about what was happening there, in particular with the voices.
Yes, thank you very much for your comment and your question. Also, the idea was that I thought about how can I stage a dispute, that when people start to monologue and not to come into dialogue, and they are not happy with each other. And I didn't want to use texts, but I wanted to use only singing. I like opera, but it's not our, we don't have opera form, tradition in Tunisia. So I tried to rework traditional songs, and to rewrite them in a way, but to keep the written, but to rewrite them with some messages, political messages. And then the idea was that they start as an ensemble, so like we start always if we really go in a real dialogue where there are challenges, my interest or your interest, now we are negotiating the new articles of the constitutions. Of course we start like in harmony, then at one point we don't hear each other anymore. So it was about how can we create through singing this tension, this dramatic tension, this moment where we don't hear each other anymore, and then we start with this song that is performed by the team of the performers. At one moment someone changes only the volume, changes the rhythm a little bit, and then at our other moment with the tension going higher, someone else brings another song, and then the other starts to speak alone. So this is like a metaphorical idea, or I try to have this metaphor of how we communicate and how can we really get in dialogue when we are in such emotional and very high political charged agendas of negotiations. Exactly. I hope I answered your question.
What was the significance of the changing of hats?
Yes, this is a very, thank you for... yes, what is the significance of changing hats? This comes as well, thank you for the question, because exactly that, it's very contextual and very local metaphor, because in the Tunisian language, we say of someone who is trying to be nice to everyone and to please everyone and to make a living out of what is there, that he or she or they will change the hearts, put the heart of someone on the head of someone else. So this is like a proverb to say, that means that I will put the heart of you on the head of someone else, and that when I say that about someone, that means that this person is trying to make interest or to get some privilege, but because he's or she or they are out of possibilities. And this is exactly, I think, the role of a moderator. I wanted to portray the role of the moderator of the Constitution and how the power is been shared between the different political parties after the revolution. Because before the revolution we had only one party and no one dares, or less people or less parties dare to say something and to be against. And after that, we had like, I don't know, millions of parties. Everyone can do a part, and then how to get something for everyone, you know.
There's one here and then we'll come to you.
So thank you. My question is really actually very simple and basic, so apologies for that. But I'd just like to hear, since you brought it up, a little bit more about how 2011 and the Arab Spring impacted theater makers and their work and their lives, and how that's been going in the past 10 plus years.
Thank you very much for your question. Before the revolutions or the Arab Springs, there were an enemy. This enemy was the dictatorship. And it was a complicity between the artist and the audience, that we speak with half words, with metaphors, everything that is going on the stage about resistance between a plant and someone who is watering the plant, between is understood, is interpreted as an act of resistance. Everyone thinks that the message is about criticizing the power of Ben Ali. After the revolution, the problem that this enemy, this common enemy, disappeared. And the freedom was a big deal, it was a big challenge for the artists. Most of the artists took time in the, they started to do politics. That means to open the theaters, to host political meetings, to engage in the manifestation on the streets. But it was so difficult for them to produce a new art of works and to deal with the new parameters of freedom, because there is actually I had the first performance that played without passing in front of what we call the committee to get a visa for distribution. That means you produce your work, and there is a committee from the cultural ministry who come and see your work and say, yeah, you have to cut this sentence, you have to change this because this is not the, yes. So censorship, it's not but they call it for orientation, but it's not for orientation. I don't know which kind of orientation. Genau, yeah. But genau. And then it was like the first time, and it was not easy. That's why this play really made a big problem, big trouble, because people were not, even my colleagues, the artists, people were not used to see direct critic, to stage direct critic. That means I give a simple example, like in this public space there was a rape of a woman by a policeman, or a philosopher, my professor was aggressed by Salafists beaten in the street because we were supporting freedom of expression with in front of the court because of a special film that it's portraying God, and there was a big polemic in Tunisia. So this is facts, they are facts. How to stage them on the stage? Also, during Ben Ali era, it was, you cannot stage it directly. Now, if you stage it directly in the first scene, it was for me like, it's the rape I represented by an Islamist. There is this beautiful woman in a traditional costume. She's a bride, and then a Salafist came with a burqa, everything in black. And for me, this is rape. This is a metaphorical rape. And then some of the audience and some of my colleagues say to me, but this is direct. This is a very direct. Well, we see that it's a very direct. It's not metaphorical. And it was very interesting to say, okay, but now we are free. Why are we still with the same dictatorships, aesthetic dictatorships? It took time a female performer called for prayer. They told me, yeah, this is provocation. And what is provocation? But what should I do? I mean, now we are free. We have to try to exercise, to practice this freedom. It was not an easy, it took time. I wrote an article about it. Theater when everything is theatricalized. It's also in English. I can send it to you.
So you got artistic licensing as a result of the Spring, the Arab Spring Revolution.
Sorry, I didn't.
Eventually you got artistic licensing.
License.
Yes.
Yeah, no, there is no.
To challenge, to speak out. Not without censorship.
Yes, but there is another problem. There is not anymore this committee. When we get this visa from this committee, the police will protect you. But without this committee, I am not anymore protected. That means there are people, they came and they brought tomato, and they started to make noise in the room, and then the theater, the people in the theater were afraid, and they told us we cannot anymore give you the theater to